guys, it's your girl Katie, and we are back for another episode. And I have Rodrigo here, Rodrigo
Hello?
Luna,
Yes.
and he runs Impact University Online, which we're gonna have tons of stuff on that, like all the links, everything that you can do, and get a little intro for that. But I happened to meet Rodrigo at an event that I did in Naples, Florida, with
Right.
B. McCoy
Yes.
Ministries. And she had this event. I didn't really know anything about it. It was called Golden Hour, and I was
Right.
like, "What is Golden Hour even about?" But I just showed up, and wow, God showed up
It's a good meeting.
on fire. It was unbelievable for me personally. If you haven't catched my podcast with Kevin Leal from last week or whenever it played, you need to check that out also. But welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited
Yeah.
about being here, and I'm glad that we were able to connect with Anthony and my wife and everybody. So
Yeah.
thanks so much for.
No, it's so amazing. So he's from Naples, you guys. I'm in Naples, Florida. I go to this event, didn't know him. He lives in Naples. So when did you get to Naples? And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I got to Naples at the middle bit of spring of 2023 with my wife. She was pregnant at the time, and we were living in Chicago, which it's miserable as far as the weather goes.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to come back here because we were living first in Miami, and we just fell in love with the town and have really enjoyed being here ever since
Yeah.
we got here.
I love Naples. So, look, there's people here before, everyone thinks this is like the waiting room for heaven or whatever. But there's younger people here. See, they have a young family here.
That's so
Come to
funny.
Naples. Call your girl. So, I'm a builder and broker in town, which you guys already know. And so, we're going to be doing some things with a university online to get people, what we really want to focus on is people who are starting a business. It's
Sure.
especially in the construction industry,
Mhm.
everyone is working as a project manager, and they're like, I'm going to be a builder one day, right? And then they don't really know what that takes, what steps they need to do, legally and
Sure,
all
yeah.
that. So we're going to run a university, so check for that soon. But what is your university all about that you run?
Yeah, Impact University is really to get believers, perhaps whether you have confidence, you've never prophesied before, you want to get deliverance or know more assurance about your prayers, leadership schools, and all sorts of different workshops around really equipping the believer to just have more assurance, confidence, and know that the authority that God gave them. So the goal of Impact University is for us to just train and activate as many believers as we can.
I love that. Activate Your Impact. Brooke Thomas plug. Activate Your Impact is out. It's Brooke Thomas's book. Just a side note.
I saw that a couple of days
Yeah.
ago.
I was like, Activate Impact? So that's what we're all about, right? Is bringing the awareness to believers to know that there is so much more that you are not tapping into that is available to you, and to be able to take a full, what's an example of one of your courses? Because I know that we were talking about inner vows that we
Sure.
make with ourselves and things like that. And what I really wanted to talk to you about today is what is an inner vow?
Mhm.
How do we make those? How do we break those?
Right.
I know that people can go to the courses and get a lot of
Sure.
information on different things, but for this episode, we're going to focus on that. So
Okay.
what is an inner vow, and why is it important that we recognize them and break them?
Yeah, for context, just to give you an answer and a history at the same time,
Yeah.
I grew up in El Salvador when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. And then my family moved to New York. And from there was when essentially my journey, I would say, with inner vows really started. My dad and my mom got divorced when I was living in Long Island. And my dad moved to Houston, Texas, and my mom stayed in Long Island. And for a course of maybe 7 months,
Mhm.
I lived in Houston. And in that time of pain, of lack of identity, of trying to find love in the wrong places,
Mhm.
I began to respond and make inner promises with myself that basically it's almost like a guard against pain, and you respond from a place of pain.
Mhm.
So sometimes people say things like, "I will never have another man hurt me again," or "I will never
Who
allow,"
says that?
or "I will never allow a mother to talk to me this way,"
Mhm.
or "I will just," anything that basically, and sometimes actually, people make inner vows as a promise to God. So perhaps you find yourself in a conflicting situation,
Mhm.
and you're saying, "Lord, if you will give me this, I will do this." Well, the Bible says in Proverbs 25, don't make a rash promise with God, because then it's just going to basically put you in a bind.
Mhm.
And so an inner vow really is a response to pain or trauma to protect yourself against that pain from happening again. But whether it's negative or positive, it's not good
Yeah.
because the Bible says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So who has lordship over that area when Jesus is not there?
I was gonna say, we're making this vow. So my vow was definitely like watching my mom with my dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she had to ask for money, and he had total control. I mean, she had to
Sure.
be at lunch at a certain time, at dinner at a certain time. She got money for this, not for
Right.
that. Like she was always kind of like dependent on him.
Right.
So it started me off on this crazy like reverse. I'm gonna be so
Sure.
independent that no man will tell me what to do. No
Right.
man will pay my bills. Like I
Yeah.
became very not just self-sufficient but like anti, like
Right.
I actually looked at it like I felt bad for women that were in these marriages, and I had
Mm-hmm.
the whole idea of what marriage was
Sure.
that wasn't real. It
Right.
was just the one example from my situation that made me think like, well, that's what marriage is. No thanks.
Yeah, what you're saying is really important because essentially, we're designed as believers to live by the Spirit. But when you have vows, you live by the vow. You don't live by the Spirit, and so it makes it a very conflicting lifestyle because you're consistently trying to get out of something while trying to get into something,
Yeah.
and then that thing that you have that it's invisible, but it's in your heart. Nobody can see it. You can feel it, but then how do people get access into your life? And inner vows just create so much chaos and so much storms and so many different things in your own life, even when you're unaware of them.
Isn't that crazy? I think what's happened in society with women with like the independence thing and like not wanting a man and feeling like
Sure.
not like another thing for me was I had an agreement with God about babies, right?
Okay.
So I actually would say like, okay, well maybe I've never had a problem, or I've never like actually been pregnant, even though
Sure.
I've been, in relationships with especially my husband. I mean, we've been together for 10 years
Hmm.
and I've never had a scare or anything, and we're careful but not like crazy careful. So I was like, okay, God, like we have an agreement. You didn't put a desire in my heart to have a baby, and
Hmm.
I haven't had the opportunity to have a baby, so maybe that's what it is. So I think sometimes like
Sure.
our inner vows is almost like us trying to manipulate what God is saying or doing and trying to
Right.
kind of validate what we actually want. So what's like been your experience with people doing that, like where they're trying to like validate their own thing, or like say, oh well, if that was true and God wanted me to do that, he would have put the desire there.
Sure. I have an employee, well, ex-employee of mine, who his wife couldn't get pregnant because he has diabetes, so he didn't have enough sperms going through to be able to get her pregnant. And she had made a narrative in her mind that said, I don't want a family. I don't want a kid. I just don't want
Protection.
this, because she was protecting herself from one, getting hurt, and from two, false expectations.
Yeah.
And then this narrative became so big that when they did try to go get pregnant, and we basically sat through a whole counseling series of sessions, and we were just emphasizing the aspect like, hey, I don't think that what you're actually saying is connecting with the desires of your heart. And we began to just take them through a series of different things that we can do to break inner vows, that she was having this hard time, excuse me, as she began to navigate, get out of those places. She began to get this almost love and experience to her emotions that she hadn't had for a while. So not only does it have perhaps an effect on your physical aspect, but it also locks up your emotions. And just as a personal point of perspective for me, last year I went through a series of just things that I was not aware at the time that I had inner vows. Again, my mom and my dad were divorced, so I grew up most of my teenage years into adulthood with my mom, and excuse me, as a result, we began to you learn to live life by
Yeah.
watching life be lived. And so I have all the memories of my mom responding to my dad, responding to just different scenarios
Oh,
about
yeah.
life, how she displayed them. And I began to go through this series of inner vows for myself. And I began to just respond and see how I was responding to my wife on simple things about life. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like something so simple that she would want to talk about. And I recognized that my emotions would lock up. I'd be like, Mel, I don't want to talk about
Let's
this.
not talk about that right now.
Yeah,
And
leave me
she's
alone.
like, we got to talk about
Yeah,
this. Because
yes.
women, like, Anthony said to me last night, he was like, that if you would just, like, use half the words to try to explain what you're saying, like, how many
Sure.
less words you'd say per day. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I'm designed. I am designed to speak.
Sure. Yeah. And so in that process, um, I began to say, man, I am responding based on how I saw my mom respond. And I went
Mm-hmm.
up to her and said, babe, I am so sorry. I apologize for just having all of this connections with my past, and how I saw my mom respond. And I'm basically treating you
Mm-hmm.
the way that I saw her treat others. And it takes a measure of humility to recognize that there's something wrong with you. So
Yeah.
the first step to breaking an inner vow is like, hey, I have a problem. So
Yeah, not only recognizing it but admitting it, right? It's like
yeah.
it just being like, okay, God, like, what are you trying to say to me right now? Like, this thing keeps going bad. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing too, is if something is repeatedly going wrong in a certain part of
Sure.
your relationship, or like relationship, work, like whatever you're focusing on, if something is continuous over and over and over again, it keeps getting worse, or it's
Yeah.
never good, you have to start looking at yourself and be like, okay, am I the factor,
Yeah.
right? Am I the
Absolutely.
common denominator in this problem?
Yeah.
Because I know with men, I loved at the event that Kevin Leal said, we're going to bring back our kingdom emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And it really like gave permission, I think, to the
Sure.
men and to women.
Yeah.
I think half of us just listening to a worship song, if we would just let ourselves hear it, feel it,
Yeah.
and speak it into our spirit, like we'd all be bawling, right? Like if
Yeah.
you actually
Probably.
allowed that wall to come down and really listen to what the music is saying and see what God is saying through it, we'd all just be like, And then you look at people where, so my stepfather,
Mm-hmm.
he is a non-denominational minister, and when I was growing up, he would do like these sermons over cereal, and I'd just be like, oh my gosh, like he'd be bawling.
Sure.
So I grew up kind of thinking that it was not weak. Like my dad's like the opposite. My dad's like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
crying. I've never seen my dad cry. And it's like no emotion, everything's fun, like you don't get anything serious, and also he'll never be sorry for anything he did. So it was kind of like two
Okay.
opposite father
Sure.
figures. And I would really be thinking like, gosh, like not he's a baby, but I'd be like, what is going on? Like what is so it was almost like unhinged,
Sure.
right? Like it actually made me start thinking, is kingdom emotion like unhinged? So what would you say to people that see people like crying or yelling or falling? Like how
Sure.
would you have them kind of like put the right glasses on to see that properly, where it's like, this is what's happening,
Yeah.
this
Absolutely.
is why, and this is why it's so important to like let our emotions actually out instead of keeping everything in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think that even that's for some people that's a cultural
Yeah.
aspect. Like for example, in the Latin community, crying is like as a man, oh that's not welcome because
Yeah.
you're too soft. And well, what does the Bible say about that? What does God? How does God view your emotions? He
Mm-hmm.
gave them to you for the full expression of who you are to be, displayed for a purpose. And so for me, I think that like I have again same employee. He was so tough and he was so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna express my emotions. I'm not gonna do this. And I said, well, you're never gonna get the ability to experience love
Yeah.
in a natural perspective from anybody because you're expecting love, but you're not willing to reciprocate that love. So how do you have that interaction? And I think for me, one of the things that happened was that when I met Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
I hated Kevin. I couldn't stand Kevin.
My
I
husband
didn't
didn't
like
like
him.
Kevin. Val didn't like Kevin.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like I had an immediate, I think because of my dad,
Sure.
maybe, and so that's a little bit different too. Where maybe I'm craving
Mm-hmm.
like the father figure more, and
Sure.
also like with where I am in my faith, I'm just ready
Right.
to like
And that's so
see it.
interesting because I've actually had this conversation with Kevin and Elmer, which is his translator,
Uh-huh.
and he has the same desire as you at that time, perhaps of just having more interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I learned from me personally, and perhaps and other people can relate, is that sometimes we are so broken we don't know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't have a reference of how to connect to that person,
Yeah.
if I've never had that, if I have that void, how do I fill with it?
Yeah.
Everybody has a different measure of interaction. So, like, I know some people that will talk to Kevin till 2 o'clock in the morning, and Kevin will gladly do it.
Yeah.
I was to the point that, like, dude, tell me what you need because I want to go away
Yeah.
from you. But
Yeah.
that was because everything that was wrong with me was
Yeah.
neglecting
You had
everything
your
that he
wall
had.
up.
So, and actually, it's great that you bring that up because the Hebrew language is the word pictures. And so it
Mm-hmm.
has, for every word, one of the pictures for pride is the picture of a wall around your heart.
Wow.
So when you have those dynamics working, it's like pride is blocking love from coming in.
And it's so sad. And we
Yeah.
all have it. It's like, I love that picture thing too, because Kevin had said that on the podcast. He was just talking about how, maybe it wasn't on that, but just about how in every time you're having a conversation, you're meeting that person where they're at, right? And
Yeah.
like he said, what do you think this word means? I think
Sure.
it was at lunch. He's like, what do you think this word means? And I said, and he's like, well, this is the picture of it, right? And like, so when you're talking to somebody, you want to create a picture of that word.
Right.
So that they understand what words you're actually talking about and like can actually experience it,
Yeah.
right? And I can tell you that in that event, I like always hear like oil. I'd always hear like about anointing and oil and things like that. And there was one song that was played where I was closing my eyes and I could actually picture like oil like covering me. And I'm like, whoa, like talk about like being able to take something and then turn it into something now
Right.
that like I can go back to
Right, yeah.
and realize like that's me being covered in oil by
Absolutely.
God, like anointed to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to like even inner vows, it's really important to understand that. Because, for example, like you said, you had a father figure, you had that interaction with them. Well, let's put it into perspective. Like, my dad was there, we had a relationship, but I had just a lot of different issues that came up throughout the time. And the word picture for anger is where was the father in Hebrew. And the word picture for fear is where was the mother. So if you holistically look at even our current generation, people and young people that are angry, they're full of shame, they're full of fear, they probably have anger issues and anger voids because those things are missing in their life.
Wow. I love the dad thing too because I think when I first started hearing the word father, I never experienced like that kind of love, right, from a father.
Yeah.
So when you don't have a connection to the word, you can't really connect to understand what God really is, right? And you might even be like, okay, well, I know my mom. My mom would love me no matter what. She
Sure.
would do anything for me. And you're like, okay, but that's not my dad. So like when you would think about God being your father, like what would you say to people who are really just struggling because they had a terrible experience with their dad? They don't even know what the word father is really supposed to mean.
Sure.
Like what's something that just comes up to you where you're like, look, this is what you need to think about so that you can really grasp what it means that he is our father.
Yeah. I think that for me, because I grew up with my mother, which we kind of have like the
Yeah.
opposite, which is interesting dynamic. I would say mommies make terrible daddies because they try to put themselves in a position that they're
Yeah.
not designed for. I'm not saying it's wrong
Yeah.
or anything that's against them. Everybody's going to do whatever they can to survive. And my mom did that. But in shaping that, the picture of father for me was absent. So when I went to reconcile all of these things, I had to surround myself with different father figures to understand what it looks like.
Yeah.
And perhaps people are saying, well, I don't know how to relate to a father. But there's nothing stopping you between you and God as a father. And when you have that embrace from Jesus as a father, it's like he comes and permeates all of your walls of your heart with love, with peace. And there's this assurance of acceptance that you don't have to get approval or anything from anybody because I'm a son. So most people will either see themselves as a servant. They'll see this as, hey, I want to serve, so I want to be close to you.
Yeah.
Like when I related to my pastor, I was serving because I wanted to be close. But at the bottom of my desire was to have that father figure in my life. And the only way that I could relate to him was through serving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the slave aspect of it or work, where people will relate to a father figure through work and you try to fulfill all of your needs
Anybody?
by having to just work.
Yeah.
Work.
Look at me now. Look at me now.
Because,
Look what I'm doing.
yes,
Look what
there
I'm
is a
doing. Do you
void.
love me?
You're
Like, am I
looking
good
for
enough?
that
Am
for
I
acceptance.
qualified?
Right.
Do you approve of me? Like, that's
Yeah.
how I grew up. Just like constantly wanting to be something or someone that
Right.
he would be like, wow, Kate, like, you're amazing.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
love you. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with their family is just
Yeah.
like craving the approval through people that you're never going to get that you can get through God. And I
Right.
think once I found that with God is like I was actually able to be like, wow, this is what it feels like to be qualified, to
Yeah.
be chosen, to be loved, to be worthy. Like when I would see worthy and not really know what that word meant. Now I know what that word
Sure.
means. Like I am worthy. I'm worthy of like not unconditional, right? Because the condition is that we say and follow God. But in general, just like that unfailing love.
Sure.
And I think that's why
That's a great-
over and over and over again
right.
in the Bible, it's unfailing, unfailing, unfailing.
Yeah.
It's not unconditional, which we've kind of turned it into, I think.
And I think the father aspect of it and husband aspect of it
Mm-hmm.
plays a lot into it. There's a scripture in Numbers, it's like chapter 30, verse through like 7. I'm not going to read them all. But
You
basically,
could.
the concept of what he's saying is that, let's say that you're in front of your husband or around your husband
Mm-hmm.
and you make an inner vow. Well, one of the ways to break the inner vow is that the husband or the father disavows it for you. And
Speaks it over. Like when you say disavow, what do you
it was
mean?
breaking the vow.
Okay.
So let's say that you're something happened in your life and you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
I will never do this again. As a husband, your husband has the ability and capacity from God to say, I break this, I disavow this from your life, and it will never happen again. And so there's been many times that my wife and I have interacted with things, and I said, hey, babe, that's an inner vow. I
Yeah.
break that inner vow
Oh, I
inside of
love
you.
that.
And so perhaps there are people watching today or watching in the future that you've had thousands of inner vows that you've made, and you've never had the acceptance of a father, you've never had the message of a father, the love of a father to give you that assurance. And perhaps you are looking for a church, you're looking for a place where you can grow, but you can have someone stand in the gap for you as a father. And I just want to speak to you for a moment and just say that we can stand in the gap for you and disavow every emotional place that you've just completely not allowed God to minister to you, and disavow, break every inner vow that has held you hostage, that has held your life from progressing forward. So that's something that's really effective for breaking inner vows, that someone has the capacity to function as the voice of God in your life and just break those inner vows.
I love that. And it's so easy, except it takes like, right, humility.
Yes.
A lot of humility and like getting rid of ego, pride, like really like dying to yourself every single day, right? Like
Sure.
dying to the flesh every single morning. When people say dying to the flesh, like what does that mean to you? Because I think as a new Christian or someone who's not a Christian, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you do that? What is that? Like, how are you dying to yourself?
Sure. You know, I one of the easiest ways to answer that is if you look at Genesis when it says that Adam died. Did he die?
No.
So there's a spiritual death and then there's a physical death. That you die to your desires, you die to the things that you want to live. One of my favorite scriptures actually is the consistent call that you hear echoed throughout the life of Paul. There's a scripture that says that I was never disobedient to the heavenly calling. That means that he sacrificed himself so that all the other people can live in the destiny that they were supposed to. And there are different types of cares that God gives us. You have human cares, you have demonic cares that get casted upon you, and then you have the godly cares. And most of the battle for people is often between your human desires and your godly desires, because those demonic or Satan type of cares, evil desires, there are things that are constantly casted upon you.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to make that bridge and say, hey, I have human dreams, human things that I want to accomplish, but I'm going to sacrifice those so that I can answer and fulfill the God desires of my life. And I just recognized over time that for me, dying to my flesh is really, it's really love. That God's definition of love is death. I have to die so that they can live. And like with my kids, I'm choosing to die to all of the curses, errors, things of the past
Definitely
so that they
sleep,
can live.
desires.
Yeah, a lot at the beginning for sure, so that they can grow up with a holistic picture of life. And so that to me is dying to your flesh, that you sacrifice what's important to you.
I love that. All right, so this has been awesome. I'd love for you to come on again
Sure,
because I
absolutely.
think like people ask questions all the times in the comments, so we'd love to like pull questions. So
Sure.
you guys, if you have something for Rodrigo and you're not like ready to take the course, you're just not ready to plug in yet, but you would watch something, just comment it below. Like what's something that you're struggling with your Christianity, with your faith, with your father, like with
Anything.
your inner vows, pretty
Yeah.
much anything.
Anything.
And what else would you recommend? Like how could people connect best to you, or like what's a first step?
Sure, yeah. We do a weekly newsletter where we talk about different things that are happening in the church. We do weekly prayer points and monthly prophetic words for everybody that joins the newsletter. So I'll give you the link and you can put it in the
Yeah.
description. That'd be
Oh, we'd
the
love that.
easiest way.
So how easy is that? A newsletter, right? So you get plugged in every week. That's serious.
Yes.
Weekly is serious. I know like we've done things. It's like that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for putting that together because I think that's the biggest thing with like being a Christian. You just want it for everybody so bad. And people have like this thing, even with Kevin, right? Like you first meet him, you're like, what's your intentions with me? You have like this guard up, and that's from the inner vow that you spoke and you don't even know it. What happened at that church? What that Christian person was mean, or you saw how a Christian lived and you like, they're hypocrites. Like something happened to you that made you think that Christianity is not for you, or that Christians are bad or whatever. You guys, we want to break that. We want you to start seeing like people giving back. People that want you, they want the best for you. They want you to feel what we're feeling. We want you to have the supernatural ability to plug into God at any time and literally like have armor on for anything that's coming up, because we'll talk about that next time too, like the armor of God, because I think if you actually understood each piece of that armor, how protected you are, like how provided for you are, like everything in your life changes when you know where it comes from and especially whose you are. So Rodrigo, I'm so thankful that you came today. We'd love, he's in Naples, you guys. So this is like, this is number one of many. So thank you so much. And you guys come back, put in the comments what you want to hear next time. And until then, stay elevated. Hey guys, if you want to see more episodes like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. And we'd love to hear what you think. See you in the comments. And until then, stay elevated.